Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships with a Patreon supported replay. This is Andy CX in the Akatsuki and he's got pretty good matchmaking apart from the presence of a carrier, which is a bit of a pain when you're trying to be a stealthy destroyer. The Akatsuki, as a quick refresher, is on the main branch of the Japanese torpedo destroyers. And on the side branch you've got the Shiratsuyu, and it's actually kind of interesting because the Shiratsuyu isn't really necessarily a good gunboat, even though it's leading to the Akatsuki, not the Akatsuki, the Akatsuki, and ultimately the Harugumo. The choice between them is actually more between, do you want more torpedoes with a fast reload or better stealth? And it's kind of arguable as to which makes for the better torpedo boat, because this gets 3 triple launchers and the base reload is something like 75-76 seconds. You can get that down to like 68 seconds with the right setup. And with the Shiratsuyu, I think the best you can manage is about a minute and a half reload with a full torpedo setup, but you've only got 2 quad launchers. So you've got less flexibility, and you'll see, you're able to put the torpedoes out less often. But you can get closer in order to do it. You actually have very competitive stealth for being a tier 7 destroyer. I think it's 5. I think it's 5.8. You can get it down to. I can't remember offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's sub 6 kilometers for the Shiratsuyu. So yeah, the guns really aren't anything great on either side. But it does otherwise give you some interesting things to think about which one you want to play. Personally, I quite like the fast reload on these torpedoes. It does give you more options overall. Anyway, he had a little poke at the sea cap, but that Gearder gave him second thoughts. The Gearder, of course, does have hydro, so he thought better of trying to push the cap when the Gearder could have sat there and mostly had him in hydro range, and potentially there would have been planes coming for him as well. So even if he'd smoked, he wouldn't have been safe because the Gearder could have just pushed him with hydro. So he's fallen back, and for some reason the Gearder followed around that island and has pushed into a whole heap of ships and is not doing very well. So that's good news for Andy, but I have to kind of wonder what the Gearder's plan was there. It's not like they tried to drop some torpedoes and immediately pull back. Now they went full face first into 4 enemy ships and have paid the price. There's also a Scharnhorst there, but they are actually trying to pull back a bit, and this leaves Andy free to get the cap. They've also already got the A cap. The enemy team is having to go at the B cap, so this is not looking too bad so far. One thing I will point out before we go too much further, this particular replay is affected by that bug where for some reason it has swapped the victory point counters around. So it's actually Andy's team that has the 350 versus the enemy team's 290. Bear that in mind for later, otherwise it will get quite confusing. So a few cheeky shots on that Lazo, who's not having a particularly happy time. Looks like they've got this flank well and truly secured. I mean, both those enemy ships not looking too happy. Some of these ships, however, are also kind of low health, so it's not like the enemy team haven't done some damage, but they had the numbers advantage. They took out that very, very unwary Gearder, and that leaves them basically free to cap. They've also managed to get the B cap uncapped. Decapped? You know what I mean. They basically forced out whatever it was that was capping. I suspect it was the Icarus, or possibly the CV. I wasn't paying that much attention, and so that means the enemy team still not getting any victory points from caps. They have to rely on killing things for now. They're actually down on a few ships as well, but that isn't necessarily a thing to bank on overall. The enemy team seems to be keeping them at bay around the A cap, and they don't seem to have the wherewithal to want to push B at the moment. Now, unfortunately for Andy, that Dunkirk swung really wildly away from where his torpedoes were going. And he could have held back one of his launchers rather than put all three in the water. That's the advantage of having the 3 launchers, is you can spread them around a bit more. That noise, by the way, was a cat using a scratching post. So thank you, Samuel. Very good timing there. Although it could have been Archie, actually. Archie has also been using the scratching posts a fair bit. Archie, by the way, I don't know if I can't remember if I did a community post about this or not. Archie is my newest foster cat. I say newest, he's only the 2nd foster cat I've ever had after Percy, but he's considerably younger than Percy and has a really, really high-pitched squeaky meow. Like that. I don't know if it was picked up at all, but sometimes it makes me confused because I think, does something need WD-40? No, it's Archibald having a squeak. But yeah, he's also very young and wants to be friends with Sam very badly. And Sam is not really having any of it. They have settled down into a fairly kind of okay, I don't want to say stalemate. Stalemate's the wrong word, but what's the word I'm trying to think of? A détente, maybe? Archie's being a lot less pushy than he was when he first got here with Sam, and Sam's having to hiss at him and take swipes at him a lot less. So Archie kind of finally got the message that Sam really doesn't want to be that much of a cuddly cat friend. He'll be a cuddly cat friend to me, but Archie, on the other hand, totally not interested in me petting him or like being a cutesy, cuddly, lovey-dovey cat in terms of humans. But in terms of other cats, he seems all on board with that. So I kind of can't blame him. You know, Sam is kind of magnificent and awesome. Who wouldn't want to be friends with Sam? But it does make me think that whichever home he does go to eventually, he kind of needs to go somewhere with a cat that is that's already there, that is friendly with other cats. Because otherwise I think he might be a bit lonely. Anyhow, opening fire on that Beliaris has, well, I mean, it was maybe a little bit greedy on Andy's part. It's basically told the carrier, here I am, and he's probably the closest ship to the carrier right now, and the carrier might be getting a bit worried about that, so that maybe wasn't the smartest play on Andy's part, but I can understand the eagerness to kill a lower health cruiser, and he has largely gotten away with it, apart from the fact that he now has the carrier trying to go for him. He's going to get some torpedoes into this Nagato as well, but not enough to kill them. In terms of killing stuff, well, the enemy team has indeed been killing stuff. They've been killing stuff too. There's been quite a heavy amount of attrition from both teams going on here, so yeah, most of Andy's team is now dead. But most of the enemy team is now dead as well, so it's not all bad. It's definitely not all bad. So far on that Nagato, that is fine. They've still got all 3 caps for now, and they are twice as far ahead on points. And oh, hello, there's the Visser. So, time to pay attention to that. That's kind of at the limit of his torpedo range. So these are unlikely to do anything, but you never know. And just because the reload on this is just over a minute. Andy has obviously gone for maximum torp reload time, so I think that's about as good as you can get it. In fact, I think that's even better, slightly better than the nominal best maximum. So I suspect he's got adrenaline rush on here as well for that extra little boost, because when you have an already fast reload on your torpedoes and you lose a bunch of health, well, at least you can get something out of it. So lots of dodging of torpedoes here, but they're not particularly fast aerial dropped torpedoes, so unless Andy is super not paying attention, he should be okay here. The Vesa has unsurprisingly turned around and looks like they might be trying to get behind the island, but I do wonder if they have put themselves on autopilot, because they're not going to make it. I mean, they've either put themselves in a hard manual turn with the Q or E key, and then taking control of the planes. Well, they'd have to be in control of the planes, obviously. Or if they've tried to use the autopilot, but either way, yeah, they just don't have the turning radius. And so they're about to go face first into the island. Unfortunately, while this has all been playing out, Andy's last teammates have died. That's a little bit of a problem. They do have a slight points lead, and it does look like Andy's going to get to kill this carrier, so that's fine. That's going to give them more of a points lead as well. But the enemy team is now basically free to cap. And of course, while he's doing all this, well, he's just lost a chunk of health. He is entirely visible while he's pew-pewing away. So, yeah. I mean, he kind of really needed this carrier to die. I don't blame him at all for getting fixated on the carrier, because when you're in a situation like this where there's not that many ships left, one of them is a carrier, and the carrier can be such a major threat in terms of keeping you spotted for their allies. Well, taking them out is actually the sensible play, and it's not like this was on a knife edge in terms of time or points, so he had the space and the time to take out that carrier, and that was no problem. So we are on ahead about 30-ish seconds, I think. I can't remember how big that jump was exactly, but he spots the Dunkirk, fortunately who is low health. The Nagato is kind of low health. That Dunkirk must be very tempting to open fire on right now with the guns, but he's just going with the torpedoes, which is, I think, sensible. The Dunkirk is a bit of a shotgun, but, I mean, chances are they will be firing HE, and unfortunately Andy gets a little bit too close there, so puts out a defensive smoke, which turns out to have been not that necessary, because the Dunkirk then rams one of those torpedoes, so that's fine. Coming out on the other flank, who is capping the sea cap, is that Lazo, who's survived until this point. We saw that Lazo early on, and they've done well to survive with not a lot of hit points, but unfortunately for them, that means that Andy has a decent chance of just plain gunning them down. Neither of these, well, there's actually 3 enemy ships left now. None of these ships are, like, the fact that there's 3 of them and they can kind of try and box him in is not great for Andy, but, I mean, Andy can just gun down this laser. And really, the only unfortunate part, like, it's not like the Dunkirk's smoke was wasted, because Andy hadn't used a smoke up until that point, but his smoke is still, you know, it's still got a fair old cooldown, so if he'd had the smoke for this situation, that would have been a lot better. As it is, he's still in spotting radius of that other battleship that's coming up. What is that, a Bayern? And so that might be a bit of an issue. He's got to take some evasive action here. It's not like he's extremely close to either of these ships, but yeah, that was maybe a slightly unnecessary risk, and it also means he's got to spend time manoeuvring and losing speed when he could have been going to the sea cap. But getting these kills, and the fact that it's taken them so long to get these caps, means that they are now once again a good couple of 100 points ahead of the enemy team. There's only about 2.5 minutes left, so if Andy can pull this off, well, I probably don't need to tell you what that means, but just in case you don't know, we'll wait till the end screen, just in case there's somebody out there that is unaware of there being a particular award that is granted under a particular set of conditions. So, Torpedo's out, spreading his bets a little bit against that Bayern, but I mean, it would be nice to get the kill, but it's probably not that necessary right now. Although, having said that, you know, are they close enough to make up the difference? They do now have all 3 caps. Could be a bit iffy, maybe. But, well, with about a minute-ish to spare, just under a minute, Andy actually does make it to the sea cap and is able to slow down there their point gain. But even if he hadn't slowed down their point gain, the enemy team, it just doesn't look like they had enough time to close the difference. So because Andy's team had managed to hold those caps for so long, and sometimes it does come down to that. Sometimes it's one team manages to get an early advantage in terms of holding the caps for the first, like, 7, 8, 9 minutes, and the enemy team suddenly finds their spine and is able to have done enough attrition damage to be able to wrest back a control. But you know, by that point, it can be a bit too late. So there we go. He managed to not quite get that cap, but he was able to run down the clock and survive. And because he was the last surviving person on his team, and there were at least 5 enemies, he has gotten himself a solo warrior. So there you go. That is the thing that I'm sure most of you had guessed he was going to get. And it did thoroughly confuse me the first time I watched this with the flipped victory point counters and thinking, wait, why did he send me this? His team's getting crushed in terms of points. And he got kind of close at the end there, but I mean, oh wait, no, okay, they won. So that must mean there was a replay error. So yeah, over 100k damage and solo warrior. Pretty good game. Don't get to see too many solo warrior games, and it always feels good when you manage one yourself, because it means you've managed to outthink the enemy team, at least at the end when it really counted. But getting the setup for a solo warrior, that's the tricky part. You can never quite predict if and when that's going to happen. It has to be a close game. It definitely isn't going to happen very often at all for most people. So that's it for this replay. I apologise for it having been so long since my last game, but yeah, I don't know, what can I say? I've been feeling kind of terrible and mush-brained, and I have bought myself a sad therapy lamp to see if that helps, and to blast my eyes with some, in theory, daylight spectrum light, which we are not getting that much of naturally at the moment. So who knows? We'll see if that does much. Anyway, that is it for this replay. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it. And of course, as always, stay tuned for more.